Hey guys, Stevie Stroh, and in this video we're going to focus on a few specific things. We are going to focus on how to remap the MAME user interface, which is a global setting for MAME, and these changes would apply to any machine you booted up using the MAME emulator, so they would apply to the CoCo 1, 2, 3, MC10, Dragon, etc. So we'll cover some user interface settings, and then we're also going to cover some specific machine configuration settings focusing on keyboard mappings. We will not get into controllers and joysticks. We're just going to focus on keyboard mappings, and the number one complaint that will be addressed by the user interface changing is the P key pausing MAME emulation, and then we'll get into some more nuts and bolts on how do I set up a break key if I want to break out of a basic program, where's the at key to do a shift at if I want to pause a listing, things like that. So let's jump in. And everything that we're going to do is going to start by opening up your terminal and going into your menu prompt. And we're going to start off by going to our utilities menu. And before we do anything, before I change anything, I want us to do a backup of our configs, because it is very possible during the very course of trying to change the MAME user interface key mappings, you can actually press the wrong key and lock yourself out of the MAME user interface completely. That is one of the unfortunate problems with this customization, is you can actually customize your way completely out of even getting in or out of the user interface and be stuck. So we want to make a backup of doing that. We're going to go into our CoCo-Pi administration menu under the utilities menu. And somewhere down here, we got to find it. We are going to back up, option number 17, back up existing emulator configuration files. So before we change anything, ABU, always back up, right? So we're going to hit OK. And you notice there's config files and there's any files. And some of the config files are specific to different machines. All right, so now that we've done our backup, now in order to be able to make changes, custom configuration changes, we need to toggle something, because out of the box, the MAME files are being overwritten every time you launch the machine to prevent some inappropriate things from happening, because you can configure your way out of things or configure your way into problems. So by default, the ini files will always be written or kind of superimposed with a stock configuration each time the machine is booted. So if you want to be able to customize your ini files and have those changes stick, you need to toggle that. And so it's saying this setting will toggle to enable or disable the use of your MAME ini files, of user-defined MAME ini files. So if it says, if it's enabled, the user-defined MAME ini file will be used. If disabled, the CoCo-Pi ini files will be used. So we're going to hit enter. And it says right now the MAME ini file is found, and it's going to disable. So I think I actually have to run that twice, because we want that to say enabled. Depending on where you were when you started this, you were either enabled or disabled, but you want it to say enabled. So when it says enabled, that means you are now able to make changes and have those changes stick. We can now get out of the main menu, and we can just pull up a Color Computer 2 of choice. I'll just start off with the Color Computer 2, and I'll pull up a stock Color Computer 2. But I do want to show you something here, because, for example, a Color Computer 2 and a Color Computer 2 with 6309 support, as far as MAME is concerned, those are technically two different machines, and it loads a different driver or a machine name. So, for example, the name of the Color Computer 2 in MAME is just CoCo 2, but the name of the Color Computer 2 with the Hitachi 6309, it's actually CoCo 2H. So different machines might have a different machine name in MAME, and so if I make a change here to the stock CoCo 2, that change might not come here because that is a different ini file, just so you know. But we're going to go ahead and just jump into CoCo 2 Deck B. And we are booting into the machine by default, and we want to go ahead and bring up the general menu, the general user interface menu from MAME, and that is toggled by pressing the Tab key. Now we have two different options here. One says input general, and that would be a global change. And then one says input this machine. We're going to focus on input general right now. And this would be a global settings to the MAME user interface, and this would be true against all machines. So we want to, from the input general, we want to choose the first option, user interface. And this is the point of contention for most people. The pause key is mapped to the letter P, and when MAME was developed to play Pac-Man 20 years ago, there was no letter P on the Pac-Man keyboard, right? We're trying to use MAME to run a CoCo. We have the letter P on our keyboard. When we press P, we're pausing. So what can we do here? If you look down here, it's telling you if you want to map something, once it's highlighted, press return to map. In this case here, we actually want to delete the mapping. So if I just hit delete, it's gone. And so I'm going to delete pause. I'm going to delete pause single step and pause rewind. All right, now I've completely deleted them. So now the question is, and by the way, just by deleting them, I fixed the problem of P to pause. P is not going to do anything anymore as far as the user interface is concerned. Do I want to add a pause key? Do I want to make some other key on my keyboard or a joystick or controller or some other accoutrement? Do I want to make that the pause key? Well, that's a personal choice. Do you need a pause key? If you're just writing programs in BASIC, maybe not, but maybe you do. So what key would you press to make the pause key pause on your situation? Only you know that answer. So I am actually not going to map my pause key, or what I could do in my case here, because I don't think I'd ever use this key on the CoCo. I'm going to hit enter to go into mapping mode, and then I'm going to press my little tilde key. And so on my tilde key, which is one that kind of looks like a little mustache, I've made that my pause key, and that is on my Pi 400 keyboard. That's like in the top left-hand corner. So that's a key that I would not press under normal operations of my CoCo, and so now that will probably work. Now, in order just to get out of here, if I go up to the top, if I go to where it says return to previous menu, that'll get me out. Return to previous menu. That'll get me out, and then return to machine, that'll get me out. I could have also just hit tab to turn off the user interface. Now when I press the P key, you'll notice I'm pressing P repeatedly and it's not pausing. But if I press the tilde key, well, tilde was actually mapped to something else too, to volume. So I'm having a tug of war, because you can map the same key to more than one thing. So by me cycling through the tilde key, I'm cycling through the volume and I'm cycling through pause. So I might want to change my mind on what that pause key is, but I just kind of wanted to show you there. When I go to input general, user interface, and my pause key, I'm going to go ahead and just clear that out. And for the time being, I'm not going to have a pause key. Now, because this was done for the user interface, which would apply to all machines of MAME, if I get out of here, and I say return to previous menu, and I say return to previous menu, and I just say return to machine. Okay, now I'm out of there. Now if I just hit escape, now in the old days of MAME, if you hit escape, it would automatically just close the emulation, which was horrible. If you were writing a program in BASIC and you hit the escape key, MAME went away, your program went away. It wasn't like this was Microsoft Word and it says, do you want to save your changes before closing? Emulator don't care. So I've had that happen to me many times. And so now it's when you get ready to exit the emulator, it's actually going to say, are you sure? If you really want to press enter. But see, if I press escape again, it actually won't take me out. So when I press escape to end and then I press enter, it'll take me out. Why am I showing you that? Because I want to show you that the change I just made, because that change was done into MAME, and that is a global setting for the user interface for the entire emulator. If I was to go to my Color Computer 3 and pull up my Color Computer 3, and then I was to hit tab, go to input general, user interface, and I look at my pause key, you notice that that key is still not there. So that was a global change that I made. So the user interface changes will be consistent across all machines that you're emulating using MAME. What we want to look at next is how do I map a specific key in the color computer to a specific key on the keyboard I'm actually using. And I will use the break key as an example and the at key as an example. I'm going to go ahead and go to Color Computer 2, Disk Extended Color Basic. I am going to hit Tab. Now instead of input general, which is global, input this machine will just go to the main machine known as CoCo-2. And now you're going to see all the various inputs this machine recognizes. For example, the right and left joysticks and the various buttons, right and left buttons, the clear key, which most keyboards probably don't have a clear key, the break key. Most computers don't have a break key. Now, in this case here, you kind of don't want the break key also necessarily mapped to the escape key, because the escape key is actually going to try to break out of MAME. So what I would do here is I would hit delete to unmap break altogether, and then I would say, okay, well, what do I want to map break to? So I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter, and I'm going to try pressing the delete key again. And actually what I did on my case is I've actually mapped the break key to the delete key on my keyboard, and on my Pi 400 that's the key in the top right hand corner. And I'll do a little test to see how that's working. Now the other key that you have to wonder is, well, where's the at key, right? Because on the CoCo the at key was its own key. Well, by default that key is the open bracket or the left bracket, which on my keyboard is just to the right hand side of the letter P. But you could map the at key to a different key. You kind of don't want to map the at key to the actual at key on your keyboard, because that's shift 2, and in BASIC you want to press shift at to get to that. So you would have to somehow figure out a way to double shift to get to that. So in this case here, the open bracket key is close to where the at key was, and then the other key here is your clear key. Where do you want that to be? Now, because on my Pi 400, I don't really have a dedicated home and end, although I do have the function key. That might be what I want to end up doing. Just keep it on home. But I was also thinking, you can map it to more than one thing. So since it's already mapped to home, if I hit enter, and then I also hit right bracket, or I have to hit enter, and then I have to hit home. So now it can be a close bracket or the home key. So you can map things more than once to more than one key. And so now let's go ahead and get the hell out of here. And let's see what Willis just did. And if I go ahead and return to machine, and I want to run a program right now. So 10 print CoCo-Pi. Of course, this is now different. 20 go to 10, and I hit run. All right, so now if I hit shift left bracket, that's shift at, and then I think enter unpauses, right? So this is how I am shifting at and pausing BASIC, right? So shift left bracket does that. How do I get out? I made the break key my delete key, so when I press delete on my keyboard, I have now broken the program. So there's been some questions on why don't you change the pause key to something else, and what is the break key? And it's because everybody's keyboard is going to be different and people's preferences are going to be different. We're not going to pre-map anything to some predetermined universally acceptable standard, because there really isn't one. Everybody's keyboard is going to be different, and everybody's preference to what key they want to press is going to be different. Not to mention that by keeping MAME standard, we avoid all confusions on, well, you know, normal MAME, the key is this, and I'm pressing this, and it's not happening. So we want to keep it standard, but give you the information you need to make those changes. So what I do want to point out now is that I made that change in the Color Computer 2. It's probably not going to be on the Color Computer 2 with 6309. So if I hit tab and I go to input this machine, well, actually it did. Okay, close brace, it's there. So that machine was not different enough. However, I can almost guarantee you it's probably not going to be on the CoCo-3 because that's a different animal. If I bring up the CoCo-3 and I go to input this machine, and now I want to look at clear key and end key and break key, you notice that those have not been remapped, right? So in my case here, and also my at key. So let's go ahead and let's make the break key. I'm going to delete that, clear it out. I'm going to hit enter to map, and then I'm going to press the delete key. I'm going to make my break key my delete key. In this case here, my clear key, when I go to remap it, I'm going to do, first time I'm going to map it to home. Second time I'm going to map it to my right bracket so I can clear the screen that way. And that should stick. So when I get out of here and I return to machine, so now if I hit the right bracket, that's like hitting the clear key. So when I type in list, nothing there. If I hit the right bracket, that's like hitting the clear key. If I do the same thing here, 10 print, well, I got to type in a way that the machine will understand me. 20, and go to 10, run. All right, so now if I want to pause this, shift left bracket will pause. If I want to break it, delete will break it. If I hit list, I'm going to list it. If I want to clear the screen, right bracket is my clear key. So one man's break key is another man's WTF. So we're not going to change it. We're going to let you change it to how you see fit. There's lots of other things you can change in your input this machine. This is where you can remap your controllers. I would suggest, if you're going to go down that rabbit hole, to just delete out and clear out everything and focus just on analog X, analog Y. Don't try to do the increment or decrement on those. Just map X to your X on your stick and Y to your Y on your stick, and keep it simple. Clear everything else out. If you need to map a specific key in the CoCo to a specific key on your keyboard, you would highlight that key, you would hit enter to map it, and then press the key you want it to be. If you need to change what something is, in this case here, the clear key, if I hit delete once, I have completely unmapped it. But when it's unmapped, it says right here, press delete again to restore default. If I hit delete again, it's going to remap it to the home key. So if you ever forget what a key is supposed to be, you can hit delete twice on that key, and that will do it. I will caution you though, if you're pressing the delete key to remap things, and you do that in the user interface settings, and you press delete on what the delete key is to delete things, you have now just deleted your ability to delete yourself out of that menu. So that's why I want you to make sure you make a backup before you do that, because sometimes you go down a rabbit hole and you can't always get out. MAME is great, but it's definitely not perfect. So hopefully I've shown you how to fix the pause key, because look, I'm pressing P and it's not pausing. In this case here, when I press tilde, in this case here, I didn't remap. Well, this one's not sticking. The tilde key is not sticking for the CoCo input general. User interface, pause. Pause is nothing on this machine here, so I'd actually have to map that to the tilde. But you get the point. So maybe the CoCo-3, although I told you this was global, I'm not sure why. But in any case, it's better than being the P key. So we'll have to look into that. I'm going to go crazy if I try to dig too far down this rabbit hole. However, hopefully I've given you enough information on how to get started, making sure the P key does not pause things. And if you need to set the break key, the at key, the clear key, some of those non-standard keys that live on a real CoCo but don't necessarily live on a modern keyboard, you know where to go to do that. If you need to learn more about the CoCo-Pi project, visit coco-pi.com. If you need to talk to us for some close to real-time questions and answers and feedback and commentary, you can visit us on the CoCo Discord, which is discord.cocotalk.live, and go to the CoCo-Pi channel. We'll see you next time, everybody. CoCo-Pi forever.